Welcome back, everybody. My name is Frank James Bailey. I'm a voice actor, writer, and in this video, I'm going to give you some writing tips. I'm mainly going to focus on one particular tip in this video, but there will be at least 2 tips in this video. You'll understand in a second. Hey, before I continue with the video, I want to remind you to please follow me on TikTok and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Make a comment and like the video as well because every little bit helps. I really appreciate it. Now let's get on with the video. My very first book that I wrote was Turkana Book 1, Our New Home. I went to Comic-Cons and promoted it in 2016. That book is told with the perspective of Paige, or rather Turkana, telling you her story. Now in 2019 I switched to comic books, and comic books is a whole different format. You get to actually see the pictures in the comic and see who's talking. My next book that I wrote and published was The Taming of April. This book is told in first-person perspective, and I found this way of writing a lot easier for me. Now when I say I'm writing in first-person perspective and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me explain. Chapter 1, April is telling you her part of the story. Chapter 2, Danny is telling you her part of the story. Chapter 3, it's Adam telling you his part of the story. You get the idea. I could have 2 chapters with April, 1 chapter with Danny, 2 chapters with Adam, but it's always that person telling you their perspective of the story. Now I'm writing my Olivia Wrestling books generally the same way, in first-person perspective. Chapter 1 of book 1 is a guy named Jackson. He's telling you how his life is going on. A couple of his clients are leaving him, kind of like the Jerry Maguire movie. What is he gonna do? His soon-to-be wife tells him blah, blah, blah. Chapter 2 is Olivia telling you her part of the story. Where's her mom at? Her dad died, that kind of stuff. Chapter 3, we get to see her mom in prison, her perspective of what it's like to be in prison. Chapter 4, we're back to Olivia again. But you get the idea. Each chapter gives you that person's perspective of the story. Now, a few of my beta readers have told me when I write this way, I tend to repeat some things sometimes. To which I responded with, well, yes, I do tend to repeat some things sometimes, but you're viewing it from a different perspective. For example, in my Taming of April book, toward the end, Danny is at the bar buying a drink. April is off doing something else. Just so happens that Adam comes up to the bar and starts talking to Danny. The next chapter, we see Adam going to the bar, talking to Danny for a second, and then he leaves to go off and talk to April. But you're seeing the same thing from a different perspective. So yes, sometimes I tend to repeat some of the same information, but you're seeing it from a different character's perspective. And the other thing I want to talk about, it's not really a tip. Some of my beta readers were telling me that I use too many tags in my writing. She said this, he said that. Danny said with clarity. April was angry when she told him. You get the idea. Now to be honest, when there's 2 people talking in a scene, and it's just that one person's perspective, I go back and forth, I don't put a whole lot of tags. But if there's 3 or more people in a scene, let's say for a Thanksgiving dinner, which I have in The Taming of April, Adam, his dad, his mom, and his little sister are all having Thanksgiving dinner. You gotta point out to the reader, Adam said this. His dad responded. His little sister giggled. You get the idea. You gotta point out who's reacting to what conversations, and you have to put the tags in there when there's more than 2 people talking, so we, the reader, know who's talking. Anyway, there you go. There's my writer's tip for today. If you're writing a book, write it in first-person perspective. It might be easier for you to show each character how they view that particular story as the story progresses. Now, just so you know, I don't use this particular format all the time. For example, I'm writing a horror book called Azrael, the Story of Steve James. And in that story, there's a girl with orange hair telling you the whole story. And when you get to the end, you realize why she's telling you the whole story, which I'm not going to go into because obviously I haven't published it yet and I don't want to give away the ending. That's another format that I've used before, sort of, with my Turkana books, where one person is telling you the story, and when you get to the end, that's actually them writing a book or writing a story, and they're actually telling you this whole story. But I prefer to use first-person perspective. It's a lot easier. Anyway, there you go. There's my writer's tip for today. If you're writing a book, write it in first-person perspective. It might be easier for you to show each character how they view that particular story as the story progresses. Finally, before I close out the video, I'm going to remind you, if you want any of my books, you got to go to Turkana.com and check out my books there, my comics, and of course my other book called The Taming of April as well. The other books that I mentioned, the Azrael Story of Steve James and the Olivia Wrestling books, are not published yet. I just sort of talked about them because that's how I'm writing them in first-person perspective. But if you want to check out any of my books, go to Turkana.com. That's all for now. Thanks all for watching, and of course, thank you for your support.